Is Christian Watson the real deal, or is he a one-week wonder? That and so much more on today's episode of the Mailbag Show. And Troy, let's start off with this because so many people are asking this question right now. Is Christian Watson the real deal? Is he a guy that you can feel confident plugging into your Week 11 lineup?
I don't know if he's the real deal, but I feel like we got no choice but to believe that he's the real deal. So we go through all Christian Watson games. It felt like before this game, every single game he got hurt. Every single game he basically got hurt, and it was all sorts of different injuries. And he was dropping balls. And we thought that, oh my gosh, like he was not a bust, but we're like, Aaron Rodgers hates this guy. He's never going to get a target ever again. And then all of a sudden he has 3 touchdowns. Like no one could have predicted that, right? So, and the Packers have been desperately trying to find a receiver to rely on outside of Allen Lazard. And Randall Cobb, when he was healthy, Aaron Rodgers was looking for him, but besides that he can find. And then Romeo Doubs, there was a little bit of connection there, but he's injured. So there just has been so much inconsistency with this wide receiver core that I think that after a performance like that, I don't see Aaron Rodgers as like, oh, I'm not going to look at you anymore. Maybe he's not going to score 3 touchdowns, but he should be heavily involved in this offense going forward after a performance like that.
Yeah, and I think that's a very reasonable take. Like he had 4 catches and 3 of them went for a touchdown. If you're expecting this man to keep scoring on 75% of his receptions, that's not going to happen. But the one thing that I liked, and this is coming from the guy who has touted Allen Lazard all offseason, huge fan of this guy. But the one thing that I noticed is he had those 2 tough drops to start the game. He didn't, and that's kind of been the story of Christian Watson all season, but they kept going back to him. And that's why, I think you got to be a little bit excited with that sort of usage because historically, if you drop a pass from Aaron Rodgers, you're not getting a look for the rest of the game. Christian Watson dropped 2 and then still got 6 more targets throughout the rest of the game. So we've seen this just be such an anemic offense where Allen Lazard, he's been a little bit banged up. He hasn't really been himself. He's been playing well, but he's not the breakout game breaker that, I had hoped he would be. Like you said, Randall Cobb, he missed this game as well. Romeo Doubs has been, drawing targets, but he's been pretty bad when he actually gets the ball in his hand, where Christian Watson is arguably the best athlete on this team. So you almost wonder if it's like a coach or like a call that came from the skybox, where like the owners and the chairman of the Green Bay Packers are saying, hey, we spent a 2nd round pick on this guy. Let's see what he can do. Get the ball in his hands because we aren't winning games. It's almost like they force fed him the ball to see what could happen. And he stepped up. So for me this week, I'm looking at Christian Watson and Allen Lazard. I have them both ranked inside my top 24. Now, they both have extremely shaky floors. I don't expect both of these guys to finish inside the top 24, but the ceiling for each of them is so high that I think you've got to start them as a wide receiver too this week. So let me just kind of ask you that question, reframe this a little bit. Are you looking at him as maybe a top 24 receiver? Who are some guys that you might think about playing over him?
Over him? I mean, there's a definitely guys that play over him.
Here,
like,
well, let's go through. We can look at some of the people that are ranked ahead of him because some of these I do disagree with. So right now I'm just looking at consensus rankings and where he falls in. George Pickens is ranked ahead of Watson. Would you play Pickens ahead of Watson this week?
I actually would. That's a good question.
Pickens has been ice cold and Watson's eaten up. It's a good question.
I know, but it's just like because also the target share is pretty narrow in Green Bay, but it's now also narrow in Pittsburgh too because only Pickens and Deontay Johnson now. I actually like Watson. Give me Watson.
Yeah. And then Adam Thielen. I think that's another one. Like if you're looking for 8 to 10 points, Adam Thielen's your guy, but I don't think that he possesses much of a ceiling. So I'd play Christian Watson over Adam Thielen. Curtis Samuel. That's another guy, like maybe the wide receiver 3. Like now that Terry McLaurin's heating up a little bit, I think I'm playing Christian Watson over Curtis Samuel as well. There's some other questionable ones, Rondale Moore, Deontay Johnson, Darnell Mooney. I think that Christian Watson kind of falls into that bucket. So I think that he's a solid wide receiver 2, maybe a low-end wide receiver 3. But if you spent the fab and got him this week, I think that you got to plug him.
You have to play him. People drop People dropped a lot to him on him. So.
Exactly. I saw him go for as much as $60 in some leagues, and I saw him go for as little as 2 or 3 in others. I mean, kinda all over the place with where he went. You got some people buying into it and others not. But I wanna thank everyone for tuning into another episode of the Football Guys Mailbag Show. Victoria was unable to make it, so back to the OGs. Troy, you and I, we started the show almost 2 years ago, and it's been a while since just the 2 of us have ran with this one again. If you're watching the show, though, be sure to give us a thumbs up. That's gonna help with the viewership a little bit on YouTube, so drop us a thumbs up and bring some other audiences over here. If you're in the chat, drop your questions. We got a few pre-submitted questions, but after we get through these pre-submitted questions, then we'll go to the chat and answer your questions live. Troy, before we get into the next question, though, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
Of course, you can find me basically everywhere at T King Mode. Twitter's my home base, but you can find me basically on all social media platforms at T King Mode.
And I am Dave Kluge. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's Kluge. You can also follow Football Guys on Twitter at Football Guys. But most importantly, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube page at youtube.com/footballguys. This show is coming at you every single Wednesday, but we've also got the Audible, the Launchpad, the DFS Power Grid, and so much more in addition to all of these short, hard-hitting videos that come out. youtube.com/footballguys. Be sure to subscribe there. Let's go on to the next question. And this one comes in from Bill Schoenhart. And Bill is asking us, which Rams receiver do you like best? Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson, or Ben Skoranek? Cooper Kupp is on IR. Could miss as little as 4 weeks. Could miss as much as the rest of the season. So, Troy, going forward, Allen Robinson, Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, none of them. Who are you picking?
I mean, obviously, and it's funny. I think you did a poll about this as well.
Did.
So I think we have to look at what it is, right? Allen Robinson had actually the most red zone targets out of all these guys. So I think he presents the most upside. But if we're looking at how it's going to be set up, right? So Robinson and Van Jefferson, they're going to be the outside receivers. Ben Skoranek is going to be in the slot. And Cooper Kupp, operates in the slot. Obviously, Ben Skoranek is not Cooper Kupp. And maybe they're not going to force feed him. They shouldn't be force feeding them like they do Cooper Kupp. I feel that Matthew Stafford clearly likes to target the slot position, and that's why we're even talking about Ben Skoranek. He's been involved in the offense. Is it a great deal? No, but now he's going to be playing it full time. I think that Tyler Higbee is really the biggest beneficiary of the Cooper Kupp injury. But out of all these guys, if you're looking for upside, I would say Allen Robinson, but it's gross all around.
Yeah, and I think that you nailed it. Tyler Higbee, he's probably the biggest benefactor here, and he's been seeing some pretty good usage. I mean, he hasn't done a ton with it so far. It seems like, when you drafted him, you were hoping that he'd have some of those big touchdown performances that we've seen in years past, but it just hasn't been happening with the Rams. Pretty anemic offense so far. But you look through these target totals, at least through the first few weeks, it's been a little bit quieter in recent weeks. But to start the season, 11 targets, 9 targets, 4 targets, 14 targets, 10 targets. I mean, this guy was a target hog to start the year. And with him working in those short to intermediate parts of the field, he can gobble up a lot of Cooper Kupp stuff. What about Allen Robinson, though? I mean, Allen Robinson is a guy that they paid $45 million to this offseason. He has not lived up to that contract so far. But do you think that maybe he can kind of work his way into the wide receiver 2 conversation now without Kupp?
Very low end wide receiver 2, maybe. I just feel that they just need to get creative, right? They have to manufacture production because Cooper Kupp was their entire offense outside of their inefficient running game. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to find the best ways to use the guys. And Allen Robinson has been used and, at the X, and it just, for whatever reason, him and, there's been a few moments, but he hasn't had a big performance yet. So do they get creative with Allen Robinson, move him all around? Do they do that with Van Jefferson? I don't know what Sean McVay is going to do, but clearly he is like, he's supposed to be the chess master, right? He got these pieces. Okay, what am I going to do with these pieces now that my queen, or my king, for lack of a better term, or whatever you want to call it, chess-wise, is gone. So I got to use my other soldiers and get creative with them. So is it Allen Robinson, who I feel like he's the most talented one, right? I hope he's more talented than Van Jefferson and Ben Skoranek. So hopefully he's the benefactor and they use him in multiple ways. But I mean, he's a flex play. He's a flex play. You're hoping to see some life now. It's like, if you can't get it done without Cooper Kupp, then he ain't never going to get it done.
Yeah, and if Cooper Cup is the queen, I think that we could say Allen Robinson is the pawn with nothing but slants and
Yeah.
hitches in his toolbox right now. But let me throw it out there. Tying it back to the first opening question that we had here. Let's say you're looking at both of these guys and one available spot in your starting lineup. Christian Watson playing against Tennessee, Allen Robinson going up against New Orleans. Who do you prefer this week?
Christian Watson.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
think I'm with you as well. This could be a tough opening week for Allen Robinson if he draws that coverage from Marshawn Lattimore. Going
Mm.
on to the next question here, and just wanted to remind you that if you are in the chat to drop those questions, and we will get to them shortly. We got 3 more pre-submitted questions, and then we will go to your live chat questions. This next question comes in from Sherry McManus, and Sherry is asking Jakobi Meyers or Garrett Wilson this week. Looks like Garrett Wilson is facing off against New England, which
They're
means that
playing each other.
and I was going to say, which means that
Yeah.
Garrett Wilson and Jakobi Meyers is playing against the Jets. So Jakobi is going to be drawing coverage from Sauce Gardner, which could make things a little bit tough, but he's been as steady as they come this year. Troy, who do you prefer between these two?
I was looking at this question, and it's actually not easy because I would have said Jakobi originally, but we can't ignore Sauce Gardner and what he's done. He has been amazing. And the Jets defenses overall, both defenses are really good. So that's why I'm like, both defenses are really good. So I'm very curious how it's going to play out. But last week we saw Garrett Wilson, like, okay, like he's getting featured in that offense. Zach Wilson was doing what he should have been doing the whole time and getting your best player the ball, right? So I think I'm leaning towards Garrett Wilson just because I am worried about the Sauce Gardner coverage, and maybe he's not going to cover him the whole time, but I feel like the Jets secondary and just overall offense is just nasty. So I slightly prefer Garrett Wilson, but it's close.
I'm with you as well too, and we see this a lot of times with rookie receivers, right? Like where it takes them a few weeks to kind of get going. And Garrett Wilson, he had a couple nice games with Joe Flacco early in the season, but it doesn't seem like him and Zach Wilson have really been able to get on the same page until these last couple of weeks, where Garrett Wilson's looked really good. So yeah, I think this is just a classic case of patience finally paying off, and Garrett Wilson looking much better now than he did to start the season. And yeah, you can't ignore it. I mean, Sauce Gardner has been arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. I mean, yeah, you got your Jalen Ramsey and your Trayvon Diggs that are making splashy plays, but Sauce is shutting down every single wide receiver that comes in the way. I mean, it's almost reminiscent of Darrelle Revis back in his time on the Jets when, like, it didn't matter if it was Randy Moss or Andre Johnson or Terrell Owens. If they were facing off against Darrelle Revis, you wanted to bench him. Sauce has almost put himself in that category where he's shutting just everybody down. I don't know if you've seen the numbers. Brett Coleman tweeted it out recently, but the snaps that Sauce Gardner has been in man coverage on, he's faced off against some of the best wide receivers in the league and has held them to nothing, averaging 22 yards and 0 touchdowns per game. It's been something absolutely crazy to see. So I'm with you. I'm going Garrett Wilson this week for this upside as well. Next question comes in from Colts fan 982734. Are we back on the Parris Campbell train now that Matt Ryan is the starter? Jeff Saturday is undefeated as a NFL head coach. Parris Campbell all of a sudden looking like Parris Campbell from Ohio State. Troy, how are we feeling about him?
I'm feeling excellent about him because we saw Parris Campbell coming to life, and then for some reason they benched Matt Ryan. I know he's doing a little injury, but still they put Sam Ehlinger in, and Parris Campbell became the Parris Campbell from a couple last year because he was injured and wasn't playing. He basically shouldn't have been playing, right? He was so inefficient. He wasn't involved because Sam Ehlinger and that entire offense was putrid. Now we see like, okay, Parris Campbell picked up right where he left off with Matt Ryan, right? So we've seen the pattern in recent weeks when Matt Ryan's starting, he likes to target Parris Campbell. And for years, he's been everybody's favorite sleeper. And it's all about, can he stay healthy? If he stays healthy, he could be the guy. And we have seen that finally. So if he's healthy, I believe that there's no reason why it shouldn't continue. And yeah, I feel like I'm glad that, Jeff Saturday decided, listen, Matt Ryan is significantly better than Sam Ehlinger. He should be starting. So yeah, I think as long as he's a starter, I don't see why he wouldn't be. Parris Campbell, I'm trying to put in my lineup as I think going forward, I think he's a wide receiver 2. Just the way he's involved in that offense, I think he's going to be a wide receiver 2 rest of season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a spicy take, but I can't push back on it too hard. Let me just throw this out there for people that, might not know who Parris Campbell is. He just started playing fantasy football a few years ago because Parris Campbell, he's not really a household name. He's never really done much in the NFL at all. This kid came out of Ohio State in 2019 and just exploded at the combine. Ran a 4.3 140. His 40-yard dash, speed score, and burst score all rank within the 97th percentile. He was a second-round pick out of Ohio State. And the kid is just a freak athlete. And like you said, it's just been injuries. Injuries are what have kept him off the field so far throughout his entire NFL career. Now that we see him healthy, I don't even know if he's the wide receiver 2. It's almost like he and Michael Pittman are just kind of the wide receiver 1, A and B. They're both getting an equal amount of looks. So, I think it's kind of spicy to say that he's a wide receiver 2 rest of the season. But I think at least this week, with the way that he's playing and the way he's been pulling targets, I think he's a wide receiver 2 this week.
Yeah, and let's talk about the last 3 starts that Matt Ryan. So 11 targets, 12 targets, and this past week 9 targets. That is sexy, right? That's what you want to see. And then he put up that first week 57 yards, 70 yards. He just put up 76 yards. Like, that's the trend that I like to see. So that's why, again, if he continues to be putting up those numbers, that was the last 3 starts with Matt Ryan. So I don't see why that's not going to continue. And if he keep putting up those numbers, then yeah, wide receiver 2, that's an easy claim if he puts up similar numbers like that.
Yeah, that's a good poll. And then, if there were any concerns that all of these injuries throughout the years had caught up to him and taken away some of his burst or anything like that, I think we saw on that big touchdown run that he still got it. I mean, that dude's got some wheels, and he blew past the entire defense there. So I'm with it as well. I do think that we can get back on the Parris Campbell hype train. Kind of funny enough, this offseason I tweeted, I've been falling for Parris Campbell every single year, and I'm not going to fall for it again this year. Like, I've been pumping this dude up 2019, 2020, 2021.
I was with you.
Finally get off the hype train in 2022, and the dude breaks out. So love to see it for him. And yeah, if he's still available on your waiver wire for whatever reason, I think this is a guy that you can drop that, handcuff that you're holding on to hope for. Not that I typically advise doing that this late in the season, but if you need some wide receiver help, if you just lost Cooper Kupp and you're still stashing, Alexander Madison or somebody like that, now might be time to move on, pull Parris Campbell in just to see what type of upside he can have in these coming weeks. Final question we have here, and then we're going to go to the chat and help you out live with your questions. This question comes in from Brian Wilcox. I picked up Deshaun Watson. Do I play him next week against Houston? Still got 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, sorry, it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks against Houston, but
return to practice this week.
Yeah, so he just plays in 2 weeks because one thing. So here's the thing about Deshaun Watson, right? So obviously, when he played, he is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? Historically, he's been one of the quarterbacks in the NFL, but he had all in about 2 years, right? We haven't seen this man play. So do we expect him just to step onto the field, even though Houston's the worst team in the NFL, right? So it's the combination of
not an exaggeration.
They're actually the worst team in the NFL.
Offense, defense, special teams, you name it.
Exactly. They're awful. So it's like, and then it's the whole narrative. Oh, he's going back to his old team. And, there's so much storyline. So I think that you could play him because I don't know who's on bye that week, but you have to temper your expectations, right? I don't think he's gonna go out there and just ball out again. I think that's asking a lot from anyone who hasn't played in a real football game in 2 years. Even if it's a worse team in the league, I feel like there has to be a little bit of, there has to be a little bit of time to kind of get back into it, right? Maybe, who knows? Maybe he doesn't need it because they're so awful and Deshaun Watson's so good at football. Maybe he just balls out right there and then. So I think that you can play him, but I just don't think you should automatically slot him in as like a, high-end QB1 like he has been in years past in his first game back.
So here's, I was on Chris Harris's pod earlier this morning, and we talked about this a little bit. And just, this was a year that we thought quarterbacks were going to be deep. Like we talked about that. Hey, don't worry about your quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are going to be deep. Even if you don't get these elite guys, you still got Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. And
oof.
I mean, yeah, how that worked out. Yeah. I mean, even Justin Herbert and Dak Prescott and some guys that we were expecting to be good haven't been good. So the conversation that we had, I pretty much said that there are 8 quarterbacks that I am comfortable heading into the playoffs with. And that's going to be Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa. I think if you've got one of those 8 quarterbacks, you're probably pretty set as far as, feeling confident that you can start those guys week in and week out. But if you got anybody else right now, if you're streaming quarterbacks, if you're still, swapping out Jared Goff for Derek Carr and Trevor Lawrence and trying to figure that situation out, now is the time to pick up Deshaun Watson and stash him because his
Yeah.
ceiling is through the roof. This guy's been a top 5 quarterback every single year he's been in the league, still holds the all-time NFL completion record. Or completion percentage record. So I think even if you've got Dak Prescott or Justin Herbert or Tom Brady, Trevor Lawrence, these guys that have shown some flashes here and there, but haven't really been able to consistently put it together, I think now you go out and you stash Deshaun Watson because that's going to be your best bet at kind of turning your season around from the quarterback position. But yeah, I think going up against Houston, I think you got to start him week 1. I mean, unless your other option is Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Jalen Hurts, I think if you've got Deshaun Watson on your team, you can start him as early as week 1 or
I think that's
as
fair.
early as his first week back, even with him struggling a little bit through the preseason. Well, we got through all those. Now let's go ahead to the chat, and we got some good questions in here. First question comes in from Mickey Welka. Keep Justin Fields rest of season or trade him away? Loaded question. I mean, we're looking at a guy who's been the QB1 over the last 6 weeks now. I mean, this dude is balling out. You could try to trade high on him, or do you just ride the hot hand through the playoffs? Troy, talk us through this. What are you doing in the field?
I feel that here's the thing. When you have an elite difference maker, and Dave already talked about it, right? QB, there's only so many QBs you want. So if you're trading Justin Fields, you're trading him for a haul, right? I don't feel like, because I feel like some people are like, oh my gosh, I have a really good player, I need to sell him. And I don't think you necessarily have to. You could just keep him and keep on winning. That's always an option. But if there's somebody who's willing to give you their whole team for them, and it's like solid pieces, maybe if you're struggling with depth and somebody's willing to give you like a wide receiver 2, a running back 2, something like that, or like a combination of something similar, then maybe then I would think about it. But at the same time, he's just makes such a difference. And his rushing is just absolutely insane. He looks like 2019 Lamar out there. Like it's uncanny. And it's like the craziest part, like defensive coordinators know what he's gonna do, and they just can't stop him. And linebackers, like they're spying him. Like it's not like they are spying him and he's just too fast and just burns them. It's unbelievable to watch, and he just keeps on doing it. And I feel like I would want to just keep him.
Yeah, I mean that touchdown rush that he had, that was supposed to be a throw to Mooney, and Mooney was covered. I don't know if you remember that one, but he was about 15 yards back from the goal line. He got
in which game? The last game or
just last week? He got swallowed up by 3 Lions defenders. Like he got teed off on. 2 other guys came in. Like it looked like it was going to be a 15, 20-yard sack, and somehow he turned it into a touchdown. I mean, this guy's got like the long speed of Lamar Jackson. He's got the long speed of Lamar Jackson. He's got the quickness of Jalen Hurts, and he's got the power of Josh Allen. I mean, still could, improve a little bit on the throwing, but he hasn't been a terrible passer, but his rushing abilities are unbelievable. And I think you just got to ride the hot hand at this point. I mean, we see this almost every single year where this young rushing quarterback breaks out in fantasy football. 2019, we saw it with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. 2020, we saw it with Kyler Murray. 2021, we saw it just last year with Jalen Hurts. And this year, Justin Fields is doing exactly that. So why trade away the guy who's been the best quarterback over the last half of a season? I think that you just ride him from here on out. And the other thing too is if you've got if you've got Justin Fields and one of these elite quarterbacks where you've got Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or something like that, it might not be a bad idea to keep Fields and trade away that other quarterback because that name value is going to bring such a big return, and then you can just keep riding Fields for the rest of the season. I mean, guys running the ball like 15 times a game and putting up running back 1 numbers. I don't think there's any reason to move off of that right now. Next question comes in from Elias, and this is going to be a 2-parter. Sorry, this is going to be a pretty lengthy question. Going to give some context. We always appreciate context because that helps us give you a better answer. But Elias says, I'm looking to move Josh Allen because I have Fields. Exactly what we just talked about there. So, I think you already got the right thing there. I'm desperate for a wide receiver as Cooper Kupp got hurt. I have Kirk, Wilson, and Tony. Would you trade Josh Allen and Christian Kirk for Josh Allen, Christian Kirk, and Joe Mixon for Justin Jefferson and ETN? This person already has Justin Fields and just lost Cooper Kupp. Do you want to go through that one more time, Troy, or you got all the info?
No, I think I got it. But I mean, Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 1. I feel into the 1 QB league, I think I'd do it. I think I would do it. Yeah. I feel like it. Yeah, I'm doing that, especially because you got Fields. So now you're pairing. Yeah, Fields, the QB1 over the past couple of weeks, the wide receiver 1, and Etienne, who didn't have a great game last game, but it doesn't matter. He's been
top 5
balling
running back.
Yeah, I'm doing that trade.
Yeah, I would too. And it sounds kind of crazy. And Christian Kirk has been no slouch. Like, don't get me wrong.
He just put up like 30 points.
Yeah. I think he's a top 12, top 15 receiver on the year. So he's been producing as well. But if you can get Justin Jefferson, I think just about any trade where you are getting Justin Jefferson and Travis Etienne, it's going to be pretty tough to argue against that. So, given the context, Elias, if you can pull off this trade, I think you do it. And
let us know if you pull off the trade. I'm very curious.
I'd be interested to see what that lineup looks like afterwards. Got another question here from MSH on YouTube. Mike Williams is back at practice. Should I drop Josh Palmer for Christian Watson?
Is it Christian? I'm assuming it's Christian Watson.
I assume, yeah.
Yeah, if it's Christian Watson, I would do it.
I would too. Josh Palmer, it looked like he kind of lost the wide receiver 1 label to DeAndre Carter last week. He wasn't nearly as involved as he was in the previous weeks. I will say, though, the one thing is, even if Mike Williams is back at practice, I don't know if Mike Williams is going to fully be able to return to form. I mean, we see these high ankle sprains linger all the time. So I'm a little bit concerned about Mike Williams, but I think that we kind of talk about it. At this point in the year, I think what you want out of your wide receivers, the guys that you're picking up off the waiver wire, is upside. And I don't know if Josh Palmer has a ton of upside. He's going to give you those 8 to 10 points when Keenan Allen and Mike Williams miss, but Christian Watson's got that game-breaking upside where he can be Aaron Rodgers' wide receiver 1 for the rest of the year. Do you kind of agree with this one, Troy? Or
I agree.
All right. So, yes, MSH, drop Josh Palmer for Christian Watson. Oaktown's Finest is asking us, got offered Antonio Gibson for Raheem Mostert, and I already have Kamara, Walker, and Gus Edwards. Good or bad trade?
Got offered, and I would move Mostert for Antonio Gibson. Yeah, I'd do it.
So would I. Here, if you got I'm going to search for this real quickly, but I pulled up these numbers the other day. We've got
Jeff Wilson took over that backfield in a heartbeat. Week 1, he just got there, but he was so familiar. And Mostert, I think, and also when they come back next week, the Dolphins play Houston. They're both just gonna run all over him, but Jeff Wilson is clearly the RB1 just by the usage, and you're gonna pull up the numbers, but he's taking over that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, he had the slight edge in the first week together, but last week, I mean, he just completely took over. So here are the numbers from since week 9, since Jeff Wilson Jr. joined the Miami Dolphins. Jeff Wilson Jr. has 34 touches. Raheem Mostert has 23. Jeff Wilson Jr. is averaging 6.5 yards per carry. Raheem Mostert is averaging 5.4. Jeff Wilson Jr., 2.81 yards after contact per attempt. Raheem Mostert, 1.8. Jeff Wilson has 3 breakaway runs to Raheem Mostert's 1. And then yards per catch, Jeff Wilson Jr. has 9 to Raheem Mostert's 5.5. So just about every metric you look at right now, whether it's usage, efficiency, you name it, Jeff Wilson Jr. is the better back. And I think that
I was going to say that trade for a 5th round pick, genius.
I mean, that makes up for everything with the Chase Edmonds move. And, they clearly wanted 2 backs. I don't think that they ever said, hey, we want to give Raheem Mostert 250 touches this year, because Raheem Mostert has never done that. Like, Raheem Mostert is on pace right now with his current workload to hit his career high in touches for a season in 2 weeks. And he's 30 years old, and he gets injured often. So I don't think that was ever the plan. It's just that Chase Edmonds was so bad that they had to give the ball to Raheem Mostert. And I think that this just makes so much more sense to have Jeff Wilson Jr., who's 4 years younger, have him be that battering ram and ease the workload from Raheem Mostert. So unfortunately, with Raheem Mostert, he might still stumble into the end zone here and there, but I don't think that you could ever really feel confident starting him even as an RB3 or a flex option going forward. His only value probably lies in the event of an injury to Jeff Wilson.
Agreed.
This question from Parker Warren. Do you think this is a good trade? I get Eckler and he gets Stevenson and Christian Kirk. I prefer Stevenson and Kirk.
What do you think of this trade? I'm curious your thoughts.
I prefer Stevenson and Kirk. I mean, Kirk, he's putting up low end wide receiver one numbers. He's not the sexiest name, but he's still, putting up solid production there. And I don't know if Eckler is that big of an upgrade over Ramondre Stevenson. I mean,
He isn't.
Ramondre's run away with the backfield in New England.
But his Eckler had a bad week this week, but every other week, man, he's been. I think I personally would probably do this trade, but I understand Dave's point of view. I feel like it's really close. I like the Eckler side a little bit better. He's the best player in the trade, so I would do the Eckler side. But I get the hesitation.
Yeah, man. I just I've got looking at Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe things can change. Maybe Damian Harris is healthy now, and maybe he can carve out some sort of role. But Ramondre Stevenson has looked really good, and he's been getting a lot of praise from Bill Belichick. So you kind of got to look at Ramondre Stevenson as a low-end RB1. Christian Kirk is a low-end wide receiver one. You're trading up two very valuable starters, top 12 at their position for a guy who's, probably top 3 at his position, but I just don't know if it's worth that. I wish we had a consensus take here for you, Parker, but that's a tough one, man. I think you can go either way.
Wherever your heart guides you, but
flip a coin and let it run. John Tran is asking us, half PPR sit 1, Chris Olave, Christian Watson, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Isaiah Pacheco.
I think I want to sit Pacheco. The problem with Pacheco is that he's getting work. He's not doing that much with it. You know what I mean? Like we saw a lot of McKinnon last week. He got a lot of targets. It's like Pacheco's starting, but it's like what? And I don't know. And like I saw a quote from Andy Reid. I was like, oh, like the way things played out, not necessarily how it's going to play out in the future, right? We'll be shocked if CEH happened to start next week, right? Or it got more involved, or I just like out of all these guys, I think
I'll just say that.
I think he's done too. Don't get me wrong.
The Chiefs put in a claim for Benjamin too.
Yeah, I think he's done too. I agree, but I'm just saying, out of all these guys, I feel like Sanders' role is solidified. Singletary, Watson, we've been talking about Olave. Pacheco to me is the one that I'm sitting. But what do you think?
Yeah. It's a tough one because Olave has been on a little bit of a cold streak, but I think that you got to keep riding that out just because he's such a good player. Christian Watson, I think it depends what you're looking for because I think Watson's got the most upside here, but the floor is really shaky. I think for me, it comes down to Singletary and Pacheco as well. And I'm looking at my rankings right now. I have these guys literally back to back in my rankings this week. Like I don't have a strong take on either of them.
And I think also look with the Josh Allen injury, we saw Singletary being used at least early in the game. They ran the ball more than they usually do. So,
and that's what it comes down for me is Singletary's got the better matchup. I think you got to play Singletary over Pacheco. The Browns are giving up the second most points to running backs in the NFL. I mean, they've just been a sieve on defense so far. They can't really stop anybody. So I'm going to go with Singletary here, but it's really a close call between Singletary and Pacheco. Next question comes from Cooper Van Hoosier, Deontay Johnson, Leonard Fournette, and Adam Thielen, and I receive Kenneth Walker and Marquise Brown. Give me the Walker Brown.
Kenneth Walker, Marquise Brown. Do it immediately.
They're saying Walker or Brown is coming back after the bye. No reason to think that he isn't 100%. And with Zach Ertz out of the picture now, I mean, I think that DeAndre Hopkins kind of secured his role as the wide receiver one. I don't expect that to change. But I think Marquise Brown is definitely going to surprise a lot of people when he comes back off of IR. And then Kenneth Walker, I mean, guy's been putting up, I don't know if you can say that he's a top 5 running back, but he's definitely top 10. Yeah, I'd say he's an RB1 and not a low end RB1 either. I mean, I'd like to see a little bit more pass catching, but he's been legit. So Deontay Johnson, Leonard Fournette, looks like he might be losing his job to Rashad White.
Adam Thielen got 20 carries. Wait, how many carries he got? I know he got 20 plus, but it was
24 carries for 105 yards or something like that. 22 carries, I think. Yeah, he had a good game. So I'm gonna go with Kenneth Walker and Marquise Brown here pretty easily. Another question from Franz. Competing team, would you give up Breece Hall for Amon-Ra St. Brown and Elijah Moore?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, Amon St. Brown has been getting targeted really heavily over the past, games that he's been healthy in and not get injured, then he gets targeted a lot. I know there's been some dips in production, but Elijah Moore to me is irrelevant in this conversation. Is really to me is like Hall for Amon St. Brown. He's competing.
I think now is just the worst. I mean, he is competing, so I get that. But I think now is just the worst time to sell on Breece Hall. Like,
I don't want
it,
to give. I wouldn't want to give up Breece Hall either because he's so valuable.
and if you do
And
want
I
to
think you
trade
could
him,
get more.
wait until he comes back from his injury, has 2 or 3 games where he's putting up 30 points and showing everybody what he can do, and then trade him. I feel like you're just and Elijah Moore at this point. Oh my goodness! I mean, what even is Elijah Moore?
He's basically a sandwich for fantasy value. Like he's nothing. He's basically a value of a sandwich. So I think you could get a lot more for Breece Hall. I know people. I think they're trying to take advantage of the injury, and that's why he's offering you that. But Breece Hall is worth more. I think you might as well just keep him.
Yeah, I tried buying low on Breece Hall in some leagues, and he showed enough in those first few weeks that nobody is selling low. I mean, I threw some offers out there that I thought for sure would get me some Breece Hall shares, but people are holding tight. I think that's selling a little bit too low on him. Next question here comes from John Tran. Is there a case where the Vikings might rest or play less of their star players in week 16 and 17, given their current lead in the division? Something we talk about almost every single year, and we very rarely see it. I mean, we'll see it in the final week of the season, but it's very rare to see people getting rested up before that. Troy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say the last week 18. Yeah, so week 18 is when I'm not expecting them, but I feel like week 16 is too early. I don't see them resting the players then. Yeah, I think 17 a little iffy. I don't know how this is going to be. Whatever, Kevin Connell, first time head coach. I don't know what his strategy is going to be. It's like it'd be nice if we seen for other head coaches that we know as a panel, like if Andy Reid, for example, right? It'd be nice to go back and see what he does with his players. Kevin O'Connell, we have no idea what he's thinking, but I feel like week 16, I highly doubt they do it then. But 17, you never know. Like, what's the point of risking your players? And also, or maybe this doesn't play the whole half, right? Maybe they play a little bit, and it depends on. I don't know the schedule right now, but I think it's a possibility. But week 16, I don't see happening
right now. I mean, yeah, they've got a big lead in the division, but it's more than just winning the division. They're also going to be playing for a first round bye, and right now, they're tied with the Eagles. They're 1 game up on the Giants. They're 2 games up on the Cowboys. And as bad as the Bucks have been, as bad as the 40, I don't want to say as bad as the 49ers have been, but they're 5-4. But the 49ers could get hot. The Bucks can get hot. The Eagles are still the Eagles. You got the Giants and the Cowboys in the NFC East that are each playing well. So I just don't think that they're going to be in a position where they're going to be, having a 3 or 4 game lead on the 3rd place team where they can afford to do that. This team's playing for a first round bye. So I think it's a little bit too early to get concerned about that just yet. This question from Mr. Green 0915 is Hopkins for Henry a good trade? I have Tyreek, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley, Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, Jacobs, and Mike Williams. What a loaded team.
I don't think you have to do this trade.
Yeah,
but it's like Henry. You have a lot of running back depth. I mean, and also we haven't seen Marquise Brown and Hopkins together. I don't know how that's going to look. I mean, Hopkins, I think, is still going to be the wide receiver 1. He should get heavily targeted, but I think Henry just had a bad game. But I think Henry's upside is just, we know what Derrick Henry's upside is. I don't think you have to do this trade. What about you?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it either. I would keep I'd keep Derrick Henry in this one. I'm just trying to figure out how you got a team that was that loaded. I'm guessing it's dynasty league. I don't know. But
that's a crazy team, man.
This next question comes in from Brett Burton. Who do you prefer this week, Isaiah Pacheco or Brian Robinson? We've got Isaiah Pacheco and the Kansas City Chiefs facing off against the Chargers, and Brian Robinson facing off against the Houston Texans, the worst run defense in the NFL.
I think Brian Robinson.
Yeah,
I mean Chargers aren't good against the run either, but I think just we know that we saw against the Eagles, they like to run the ball. And I think even sometimes Brian Robinson is not the most efficient, but you know what they do? They give him the ball. So I'm going Brian Robinson here.
Yeah, I've got Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson both inside my top 24 this week just because of the upside.
Yeah.
Houston cannot stop anything, and either of these guys, Robinson or Gibson, could finish the day with 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I'm going with Robinson here as well. Next question comes in from Jordan Budoin. Play one tight end in full PBR. Kyle Pitts, Tyler Higbee, David Njoku. I think, I
Higbee.
keep seeing all these questions about Njoku, but is he coming back for sure this week?
I don't know, because last week, remember, there was talks about last week that he might come back, and then towards the end of the week, I was like, oh, he's not going back. So this week,
Yeah,
I think they're trying to. I think
didn't
this is the
practice at all
target.
today.
Yeah, so I don't know, but regardless, though, I'm playing Higbee with the Cooper Cup injury. I'm playing Higbee, and
Sheesh.
and Stafford should be back from. Hopefully, he's back from his concussion. I don't see why he wouldn't be, but
I'll say Kyle Pitts has 24 targets over the last 3 weeks. Kyle Pitts
yeah, but what has them
is
targets done for us? Nothing.
a bunch of nothing. That's right. Yeah, I'm going Higbee as well, but man, I think you might be able to convince me to play Kyle Pitts here. Also, why are you rostering 3 tight ends? There's no reason to roster 3 tight ends. Use one of those spots, cut somebody, let somebody else pick up a tight end. It's a tight end. Use that spot for a handcuff.
Maybe it's
We're
dynasty.
too late in the season to have 3 tight ends.
Maybe it's dynasty. You never know.
Maybe it's dynasty, or maybe these guys are available on his waiver wire and he's not sure who to pick up. Next question comes from Troy Romero. Would you trade Chris Olave and Travis Etienne for Ramondre Stevenson, Jalen Waddle, and Harrison?
Is that? I don't know if it's IDP or if it's Damian Harris or Najee Harris.
Or is it Devi and we're talking Marvin Harrison Jr.? I don't know.
Troy, if you want to clarify, that'd be awesome. But I like the Waddle side. I don't know. It's ETN I know is awesome, but Waddle, Stevenson, we hyped up Stevenson. ETN is really good, but I like the Stevenson, Waddle, whoever Harrison is.
Yeah, it's tough for me to give this not knowing who that third player is. Assuming it's Najee Harris. I mean, really, what's the difference between Najee Harris and Damian Harris right now? They're basically the same player,
they're
right?
basically the same.
Does it make much of a difference?
I just Waddle. We know how.
Yeah, Waddle's a beast,
yeah.
man.
He's top 5 in yards. Him and Tyreek, man. Oof.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Trey Parker. Justin Fields and Josh Palmer for Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison. Jimmy G is my other quarterback. Also have Zeke, Swift, and Jamal Williams. Thank you. Man, I cannot imagine going into the fantasy playoffs with Jimmy G as my quarterback.
Yeah, I see because he needs running back help because Zeke and Swift have been disappointing. Jamal Williams is Jamal Williams. I don't know. I don't want to give up Fields, especially because Jimmy G does not provide you really good upside at all. But you can't trade him. You're not going to get anything for him. But Dalvin Cook is obviously an RB1. It's not an unfair trade. This one's a tough one.
I think I'm keeping Fields. Just that position.
I think I'm keeping Fields too because
right
he just provides such a difference. But I want Fields, but I get the need. I get the reason why you're asking the question. But Fields, to me, the drop off between Fields and Jimmy G is astronomical. So that's why I'm a little.
Here's my advice on this one. If Deshaun Watson is available on your waiver wire, make this trade. If Deshaun Watson isn't available, or I think that's what it comes down to is who is available on your waiver wire. I imagine if you're rostering Jimmy G, that the waiver wire for quarterbacks is probably pretty thin. If you can get Deshaun Watson and want to bite the bullet with Jimmy G for the next couple of weeks until he comes back, I would do that. But if you can't get a better quarterback than Jimmy G off the waiver wire, I think that I'd stick with Fields in this situation. Next question here comes from Jim896. Full PPR start 1. Tyler Higbee, DJ Moore, Deonta Foreman. This one is easily Foreman for me.
Yeah, Deonta Foreman.
Yeah, not thinking about this one too much. Next question here comes from Football Talks. Should a trade like Olave, Tyler Lockett, and Jamal Williams for Dalvin Cook and Rashad White be vetoed?
No, definitely should not be vetoed at all.
I don't even know.
I hate vetoes in general, but
yeah, that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Scott Hilger. PPR, please pick one. Kadarius Toney, Devonta Smith, or Mike Williams if he plays. Thank goodness I have Justin Jefferson.
Tony.
Yeah. I mean, I
Tony.
think I might be going Tony too, but at the same time, we got to look at Devonta Smith. And I don't want to get too
with
crazy
with
here,
Dallas
but
Goddard. Yeah.
with Dallas Goddard out, I think Devonta Smith could take on that kind of safety valve role, getting a lot of short and intermediate routes. I think I'm going to go with Devonta Smith here.
I'm going Tony, but I get the reason, but give me Tony.
I mean, Tony looked good, and they were scheming plays up for him. Wrote about Tony in my article this week. I'll be talking about him in my trade talk video as well. Really like what I saw from Tony, but I think I'm going to go with Devonta Smith here, ever so slightly. Next question: flex full point PPR, Curtis Samuel or Kadarius Toney?
Tony.
Yep, that one is easily for me as well. Let's see. Running low on questions, but we're trying to get through all these before we run out of time here. This one comes from Mr. Green 0915. What do you guys think? Trade Deonta Foreman for Cordero Patterson?
No, keep Foreman.
Yeah, I'd keep Foreman too. So, we heard this all last year. Like, Foreman was balling out, and everybody wanted to trade Foreman, sell high on Foreman. And now here we are in year 2, and Foreman is balling out as well. I feel like we talked about
a different situation.
Yeah, a different situation, right? Like, this dude is just a really good football player. Like, it's not just like situational, like he's getting volume. Like, he is a good football player, 3rd-round pick. He's got elite size, he's got elite speed. It was an Achilles injury as a rookie that set him back, and then it took him a few years to bounce back from that, but he is a really, really good running back. I feel like everybody kind of has this mindset that you need to sell high on Deonta Foreman because he's producing, but I think that you can just ride him as a top 15, top 20 back for the rest of the season.
Agreed.
Next question here. Timothy Johnson is saying, hey guys, would you drop Brandon Cooks for Christian Watson? Non-PPR.
Brandon Cooks has not been good. He's not. Ooh. I'm trying to not get caught up in Brandon Cooks' name, because if you just look at his numbers, he's not been a good wide receiver. So based off of his numbers, the question is very valid. Do we see it? It's week 11. Do we see any significant change between Brandon Cooks' usage? And obviously he's still mad he didn't get traded. Christian Watson, I think, has more upside than Brandon Cooks. So yeah, I think I might do it.
Let me put it this way. In my home league, Brandon Cooks was dropped the other day. And when I put my waiver claims in today, put a big old bid on Christian Watson and didn't even think twice about picking up Brandon Cooks. So I'm going Watson here as well. Last question before we log off here. This one comes in from, wrong question. Don Boone, is Fields an RB1 or a QB1? Click that one on accident, but that's
isn't he he's top 10 in rushing, like in the NFL, not just like rushing. QB. That's insane.
Yeah, it's like the guys ahead of him. I think it's Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Damian Pierce, Josh Jacobs. I mean, and then Justin Fields. Like, it's just crazy to see him up there. This question from Mr. Green 0915: who should I start, Deonta Foreman or Alvin Kamara? Oh, that's a better question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Alvin Kamara, I think for the past 2 weeks, he hasn't done anything. He had that really big game few weeks ago. Then it's been disappointing. I don't know why they keep starting Andy Dalton. Please put Jameson, for the love of God.
You might see it this week. Sigmund talked about that on his waiver wire video and said that it wouldn't surprise me if Jameis Winston gets a start this week.
Who did? I don't know. I think if it was me, I'm probably playing Kamara. It's hard to Kamara. I think Kamara.
I've got them relatively close. My RB10 and my RB14, but I am going with Alvin Kamara as well. Was about to log off, but we did get one more question in here from our good friend Herms, and Herms is saying, my dudes, I picked up Cole Kmet in my home league PPR. I really, really need a win. Is it dumb to bench Kyle Pitts for Cole Kmet?
No, I'd rather play Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet as well. Same league that I said I picked up all Christian Watson with that big old bid. I also picked up Cole Kmet because I just lost Zach Ertz, and I'm going to be starting him. Got to ride the hot hand, man. 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games.
It feels even better when you start somebody on your own team and get your points. Yeah,
it does. And I know you. We talked about it all off season in all of our best.
And finally, he's finally
Waddle. Well, Jalen Waddle too. I know
Oh,
Jalen
yeah.
Waddle was your boy this offseason, so you got to feel good about that one. But
Mhm.
Troy, it's fun bringing it back to the roots, just you and I on this show. But before we log off, let everyone know where they can find you on social media.
Of course, y'all can find me at T King Mo, basically on all social media platforms. Twitter is my home base. I appreciate y'all.
And I'm Dave Kluge. You can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. Be sure to subscribe, youtube.com/footballguys, so you can see all of the video content that we are going to be putting out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.